What's up, guys? Lucky Locks here, back with another video. Today we're going to be breaking down Bellator 262, Velasquez versus Kielholtz for the Flyweight World Championship. And yes, should be a really good fight. We've got some Bellator, we've got some LFA, and we've got some UFC this weekend, so it should be a real good weekend. Hopefully everyone's been doing well in the meantime, and without further ado, let's just get right into the fights. First fight of the card, we have Charlie Campbell coming up against Nick Giulietti at lightweight. So Campbell is 3-1, 5-0 amateur career, now 3-1 as pro, obviously. Still pretty young at 26, so still making improvements. Beating Noah Dung on Bellator, that's a prospect that a lot of people are pretty high on. Just picked up a win on CFFC. He's probably fought the slightly better competition of these two guys. I mean, Noah Dung would definitely be the best fighter that either of these two guys have faced, I would say. Nick Giulietti, on the other hand, 2-1. He had a 4-1 amateur career, won his first two pro fights. The second one was on CES, and he just lost to Golden Jr. on CFFC, who's a pretty good fighter as well. So this is, an interesting matchup. We don't really know too much about either guy, but I am going to side with Charlie Campbell in this one. I feel like he's just a little bit better, making those improvements a little bit more, and I just feel like he's faced a slightly higher level of competition, so I'm going to go with Charlie Campbell in this one. Next up, we have Johnny Soto and Adil Benjilany at 145 pounds. So Johnny Soto, 4-1, just pulled off a massive upset over Weber Almeida. He was getting pieced up early, but Almeida gassed out. Soto was able to use just a relentless grappling attack to win a decision. He was able to control Almeida for large portions of the second and third round. He's a good grappler, he's a tough guy, and a pretty good fighter just overall. I definitely underrated him last time out. I didn't think he stood much of a chance against Almeida. With that said, the opening line on this fight made absolutely no sense to me at all. He opened at -260. He's now down around -130, -140 range. I have no idea why he was such a big favorite. Honestly, I would have expected him to be the dog in this one. If you were to blindfold me and ask me what I think the odds would be for this fight, I would have thought that Soto would be a dog. I did bet Adil Benjilany at +115. Soto really hadn't faced anyone that good up until Almeida. Granted, he did win that match, and I absolutely don't want to take anything away from his performance because it was a great performance and a very well-deserved win, but you kind of wonder if Almeida's cardio was a little bit better, what that fight really would look like. Because Almeida was definitely having a lot of success early on. Johnny Soto was definitely better than I thought he was, so I still think this line would be pretty close, but I just feel like Benjilany should be favored here in my opinion. And if we're looking at Benjilany here, he's 5-3, he's a Moroccan fighter, trains with Bilal Muhammad and some other UFC fighters like Juliana Pena and Macy Barber. He's much more experienced than Soto is, just with high-level opponents. He's fought much better opposition. He was on a 5-fight win streak with 2 wins in Bellator before going on his most recent 2-fight skid. During that time he was submitted by Chris Lencioni, who is, a pretty high-level jiu-jitsu player. He has some accolades to his name for sure, and that threat of a submission is going to be there with Soto, but Lencioni, is levels above him and also many others. And then Benjilany lost a split decision to Kevin Croom. That was his most recent fight. I agreed with the decision, but Croom did do a lot of lay and pray. I think that Benjilany probably had the more dangerous and bigger shots on the feet. And I think that Benjilany is absolutely the better striker in this matchup with Johnny Soto here. And I think that he is in good enough shape. His cardio is good enough. He's tenacious enough to deal with that pressure in the grappling department from Soto. So I am going to go with Adil Benjilany here. I feel like he should probably be favored in this one. So that brings us to Diana Avsaragova coming up against Gabriela Gulfin at 125 pounds. Avsaragova is 3-0. She's only 22 years old. She just won her Bellator debut against Tara Graf and did it within 30 seconds, so really nice start to her Bellator career. She's still unproven, but she definitely looks promising. She's going to have a slight size advantage in this one. She hasn't really fought anyone that good, to be completely honest, and probably not starting to do that here in this fight with Gabriela Gulfin. Gulfin is 2-2. She was 5-1 as an amateur. 2-2 as a pro, obviously. One of her pro losses was to Erin Blanchfield, and both of her losses as a pro came on CFFC, so she's definitely more experienced than Avsaragova is. in terms of documented fights, I really don't know what Avsaragova's resume looks like outside of those 3 pro fights. Maybe she had a ton of amateur fights that we just don't know about, but it looks like Gulfin's got some pretty good experience. But I'm not going to go against Avsaragova here. I mean, she's a huge, huge favorite. I don't know if I would really want to touch her from a betting standpoint, just because the line has gotten pretty inflated at this point, but I do think that she should be favored in this one, and I feel like she probably is going to get the job done. So give me Diana Avsaragova in this spot. Now we have kind of a similar fight in Cody Law and Theodore Macuka. Cody Law also 3-0, just like Avsaragova. And, he's had really great success so far. He's going to be significantly shorter in this match, but a little bit longer. And I feel like that might even just play into his favor, being a wrestler. He's getting some work in at American Top Team, 5-0 as an amateur, and now he's won all 3 pro fights that he's had. All 3 of them were on Bellator. Really good wrestler, did it in college, just an athletic guy in general. Hasn't really faced great competition so far, and just like I said about Avsaragova, I don't believe that that's going to be starting now. Theodore Macuka is 1-0, 1 amateur win, 1 pro win over his career. Both of them were knockouts in the first round, so there's really not a lot to go off with them. He's only 21 years old at this point. I do think that this will be a pretty big step up in competition. I'd be very surprised to see him win here. But kind of similar to what I said about Diana, Cody Law at like minus 1200 or whatever it is now. It's just kind of crazy. I mean, I just don't really feel like it's worth the risk. If he was maybe like minus 700, even minus 750, maybe I'd throw him in a parlay. But I don't know. I would probably just stay away at that price. But I do think that he probably gets it done and most likely makes it look easy in this one. So now we're having a look at Hani Marks and Said Sowma. Marks is 19-8. Spent some time on PFL. Just recently, well, somewhat recently, lost his Bellator debut to Linton Vassell, who was supposed to be on this card actually, and that's a tough matchup. Marks is currently training at Extreme Couture, Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but just hasn't been looking great recently, and he is getting up there in MMA years. He's definitely slowed down a little bit. Seems like he's making, some minor improvements in his stand-up, but in my opinion, he's not the same fighter that he once was. And now looking at Said Sowma, who is 6-2, he was a former Titan FC heavyweight champ, trains with great fighters at American Top Team. Not that Marks doesn't have a lot of great fighters at his disposal at Extreme Couture as well. Said Sowma lost his last fight to Tyrell Fortune. That was his Bellator debut. That's a tough fight to get in your debut. His other loss was in his first pro fight. That was against Steve Mowry, who is also, a Bellator fighter now. Sowma tends to weigh in a little bit under the limit. He doesn't really look massive in there at heavyweight. He's an excellent grappler. That's kind of where he shines most of the time. He'll have a slight reach advantage here, so we'll have a look at what he'll be able to do with that. I think he's going to be a little bit lighter on his feet than Marks is in this one. He's a little lighter on his feet than the average guy at heavyweight. Got some decent low kicks. The thing about Said Sowma that rubs me the wrong way a little bit is I just feel like he doesn't really have that sense of urgency that I like to see when I'm backing a fighter. He's very calm in there, which is a good thing, but sometimes I just feel like he's a little bit too calm. Definitely would be stressing me out if I had money on him. I do think he probably gets it done in this one. I like Said Sowma here. I feel like the line is actually pretty fair on this fight. But just that level of urgency kind of makes me nervous. So for that reason, I personally will be staying away on this one. But Said Sowma is going to be my pick. So now let's talk about Johnny Eblen and Travis Davis middleweight matchup here. Johnny Eblen 8-0. We saw him not too long ago pick up a nice win. American Top Team product, college wrestler, really good at it, undefeated prospect as an amateur and a pro, combining for 11 straight wins and 11 fights. Just picked up, as I was talking about, a great stoppage win over Daniel Madrid on Bellator. He's a really powerful guy, hits really hard, and lands takedowns with authority. Now, Travis Davis, 10-4. Before you look right past this guy, he's actually a pretty good fighter. He's got some good boxing. He's got a bit of grappling as well. He has four professional boxing fights. He's won all 4 of them. Used to be a Marine, so he's a really tough guy. Hasn't fought anyone super high level. He did fight Josh Fremd back in the day, who's been making some waves on the U.S. regional scene. That was one of his losses out of the 4. And he had a bout scheduled for next week, actually, but he signed with Bellator, and this fight was made, so that will probably have fast-tracked his camp and his preparations a little bit. Might have a small impact here, but I can't see it being too big of an issue. Ultimately, I am going to go with Johnny Eblen, just based on the fact, training at American Top Team, fought some pretty good guys, really good-looking prospect. I just like what I see out of Johnny Eblen every time out. I feel like he looks a little bit better, so that's going to be my pick in this fight. Now having a look at Arlene Blencowe and Diana Silva at 145 pounds. Blencowe is 13-8. Since 2015, she is 8-4. 3 of those losses came to Julia Budd and Chris Cyborg. Julia Budd, she lost to twice. Chris Cyborg just once in her most recent fight. Can't really fault her much for those ones. She's had some nice wins in the meantime, like Leslie Smith, Janae Harding, Amanda Bell. Blencowe is a pretty good boxer. She's got fast hands, got some power there as well. Likes to control the center of the octagon, or the cage, I should say, because it's not an octagon in Bellator. Which I like to see. I like people that are going to look to control, and it just makes a good impression on the judges. And looking at Diana Silva, 9-6, she's fought some good opponents, such as Jennifer Maia in the past and Julia Budd, who she just fought. And I bet on Julia Budd in that fight, and personally, I thought that Silva won. I was mentally preparing myself to hear Diana Silva win that split decision. I was extremely relieved to see that Budd got the nod, but I do feel it was a little bit lucky. I definitely thought that Julia Budd would come out a lot more wrestling heavy in that one. Diana Silva just doesn't seem like the type of fighter that you really want to stand with. I mean, in this fight, she's going to have a slight reach advantage. She's a little longer, a little more agile than Blencowe. Silva moves pretty well. She's athletic, pretty snappy striker, and she's a Muay Thai black belt, so like I said, Silva doesn't really strike me as the type of fighter that you really want to stand with, especially in the case of Julia Budd in the last fight. I felt like Silva was kind of getting the better of their standing exchanges. Silva's also a pretty solid grappler with a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and I'm actually going to go with the underdog Diana Silva here, just slightly. I do like Blencowe, and she definitely has the power to change the fight with just one strike. But I was really impressed with Diana Silva last time out. I'm not gonna lie, so I'm gonna go with Diana Silva in this one to get the job done for an underdog pick. Now we have Mattos coming up against C.J. Hamilton at bantamweight. Mattos is 12-2-1. He was a contestant on The Ultimate Fighter Brazil back in the day. Spent some time in ACB, fought some pretty legit guys over there. Went 2-1, and the loss was to Piotr Jan. So really can't hold that one against him whatsoever. That's really not a bad loss. He debuted on Bellator against Magomed Magomedov. I mean, that's another really tough matchup. So I don't hold either of those losses against him. If anything, those make your resume look pretty good. I mean, you got 2 losses and those are the 2 guys. Not too much to complain about there. He had a great back take early in that Magomedov fight, actually. The position was reversed pretty quickly, though. He was supposed to fight Brett Johns a little while ago, and now he has probably his easiest opponent in the last few years, I'd say. Training at Pitbull Brothers, you guys know I really like that camp. I think very highly of it. He's going to have a sizable reach disadvantage in this one, but he's a really solid guy with well-rounded skills, and I feel like he probably is the better fighter out of these 2 guys. Looking at C.J. Hamilton, though, 15-8, he's a pretty good fighter, too. Faced some good guys like Casey Kenny, Jordan Espinosa, Jimmy Flick on LFA. The problem is that he lost all of those. He made his Bellator debut against Magomed Magomedov just like Mattos, and it was actually on the next Bellator event right after Magomedov fought Mattos. It was the very next event he was fighting C.J. Hamilton, and also it just didn't go well for Hamilton, actually. You could probably argue that he put up a better fight than Mattos did early on, but then it got kind of ugly at the end of round 1, and he got finished in the second round. And Hamilton just hasn't performed against guys who are just a little bit of a step up in competition, and I feel like Mattos might be on that level where Hamilton just doesn't really have the skills to get it done, but I'm not counting him out. I feel like he definitely has a shot here. He's got some decent stand-ups, some good feints, some decent counters, but ultimately I'm going to be going with Mattos to get this one done here. So next up on the agenda is Tyrell Fortune and Matt Mitrione at heavyweight. So Tyrell Fortune 10-1, training at Black Zillions, All his pro fights have been on Bellator. The one loss is to Tim Johnson, a UFC and Bellator vet, just fought for the interim heavyweight title. He's on a 2-fight win streak right now. This is Fortune I'm talking about. He's a good prospect, but really hasn't fought great competition outside of Johnson. And obviously he lost that one pretty early, so we didn't learn a whole lot from it. He was supposed to fight Mitrione last time, but it fell through. Ended up rematching Jack May, which had ended in a no contest for the first time. He won that bout with pretty much little to no difficulty. Fortune is an excellent wrestler. He leans very heavily on that part of his game, but he also moves extremely well for a bigger guy, and that's partly due to weighing in a bit under the limit, but also just because he has pretty good footwork and he's an athletic guy. He's going to be a lot faster than Mitrione in this one, in my opinion. He's going to have some nice knees in the clinch, I feel like. Mitrione, 13-8, training at Rufus Sport, obviously a long-time UFC and Bellator veteran. Got notable wins in his career over guys like Derek Lewis, Phil DeFries, Fedor, even Kimbo Slice back in the day. He's fought a lot of guys over the years and hasn't had too many easy matchups. He's going to have a sizable reach advantage here. Probably will have about 10 to 15 pounds on Fortune in weight as well come weigh-in day. But, Mitrione is aging. He's in his 40s now. He's on a 3-fight losing streak with a no contest sandwiched in between. He's got losses coming to far superior opponents than anyone Fortune has faced, aside from the common opponent of Tim Johnson. But I'm still going to go with Tyrell Fortune here. Mitrione is just really looking like he's winding down towards the end, and Fortune looks like a pretty solid prospect. Mitrione, I just don't think, if Fortune decides to wrestle here, I feel like it's his fight to lose completely. So I'm going to be going with Tyrell Fortune to get this one done. Now we have the main event of the evening, Juliana Velasquez coming up against Denise Kielholtz for the Bellator Flyweight Championship. Velasquez is 11-0, undefeated, excellent fighter. I truly believe that she's one of the top women's flyweights in the world right now. She's 6-0 in her Bellator career, coming off a big win over Alimale McFarlane, who was handed her very first loss of her whole career, courtesy of Velasquez in that one. She looked great during that fight. Going to have a slight height and reach advantage coming in here for her first title defense. Has her judo base, obviously. I think that's going to come into play in this one. Velasquez will be physically bigger at 5'6", while Kielholtz is listed. I've seen her at 5'2" and 5'3", so right around there. Juliana will also have a slight 1.5-inch reach advantage in this one. Definitely doesn't want to eat too many shots from Kielholtz. She's called Miss Dynamite for a reason, but I feel like Velasquez definitely has a much more well-rounded game and has a lot more ways to win than Kielholtz does. But looking at Kielholtz, 6-2, started her Bellator career on the kickboxing side of things. For Bellator kickboxing, had a 4-1 record there. She lost her MMA debut in 2015 prior to that Bellator kickboxing stint. All of her MMA bouts after that have been under the Bellator banner. She is 6-1 since returning to MMA in 2018. That one loss was to Vida Arteaga, and she was able to put together 4 straight wins now, including a TKO victory over Kate Jackson most recently. It was a pretty nice finishing sequence. And Kielholtz is just a really excellent striker. She has that Dutch kickboxing. Her husband is a kickboxer and a mixed martial artist as well. All of her MMA fights on Bellator have ended inside the distance, with the exception of one decision victory. Kate Jackson is really her only high-level win. The only other, high-level-ish opponent was Vida Arteaga, who she lost to, and she was favored coming in. Most people thought she would win that one, and she was feeding Arteaga some pretty good shots, but Vida was just eating them and coming forward. Denise was picking her apart on the feet, though. Great counter shots and combos. Her defensive wrestling was sharp for the most part as well. She has the presence of mind to stand back up, when she got top position. Very aware of where she was having her success. I have no clue how she didn't get Vida out of there with the shot she was landing, but Denise was finally taken down cleanly in the second round. Did pretty well to get back up and ended up getting Vida down, but ultimately ended with Vida getting up and locking in a standing guillotine. So, she was definitely on her way to winning that one, but she got caught in the choke. Just a bit of a mistake, and she paid for it. But, the kickboxing acumen and experience is definitely enough to make you feel nervous if you like Velasquez. But I just feel like Velasquez is a bit of a different level than Kielholtz is. I just like her well-rounded game more. I feel like she has more ways to win. She's going to be the bigger fighter in this one. And yeah, I just like Velasquez. I feel like she's a little bit better. So that's going to be my pick, going with Juliana Velasquez to successfully defend her title. So those are going to be my picks for Bellator 262 this Friday. Hopefully you guys have a great week. Best of luck, whatever you end up betting this weekend. And, you know, as always, I'm very appreciative of everyone who takes time to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Appreciate everyone. Take it easy. Hope you have a great day.